I've been having trouble with my throat, my voice, clearing my throat, sinuses, allergies for weeks now. Finally went to the doctor. He said, you need a shot. He gave me a shot. He said, this will knock it out. So 2 days later, it's back. He said, I'll prescribe a prescription for you. Because he knew I had to have this to preach. And so I got the prescription. And I don't know about you, but I like to read the possible side effects to drugs. Listen to this one. First possible side effect, stuttering. That'll really help. The second one, memory loss. Seriously, I'm not kidding. And the third one was confusion. So I hope I can get through the sermon, because I took some of that last night, the way I was supposed to. Keep my water bottle close by. It's been 2 weeks since the death of George Floyd. Terrible incident. Bad cop. Never should have happened. We all witnessed it on television. When I say bad cop, I'm not reflecting on the 99.9% of good cops, good police officers across this country. And what was done in that scene that we all witnessed is not representative of those good men that serve and protect, wearing blue. What began as peaceful protest, and I will tell you, I miss Martin Luther King. He knew how to do a peaceful protest. But it soon digressed because of the, I call it the hijacking, really, of a protest to become nothing more than arson and looting and killing. A police captain, St. Louis, Missouri, was shot down on the street. He'd served for 38 years. All he was doing was a favor for a friend. A friend of his that owned a pawn shop. He said, I'll go and stand out front in my uniform and hopefully dissuade them from coming by. He was shot dead by a 24-year-old boy. The boy that shot him was black. But that police officer, that police captain, David Dorn, was also black. That was not a racial shooting, that was shooting a uniform. I read about a young woman out in Dallas. She had, since 2014, strived to open up her own boutique. It was called Guns N' Roses Boutique on Commerce Street. I've been there. And then along came the coronavirus, had to shut it down. When she got it fully operational again, fully stocked with inventory, ready to reopen, and along came the violence again. Looting. Destroyed. They completely destroyed her shop, took all of her inventory. Princess Pope, the owner, was black. That was not racial destruction. That was simply anarchy. And the America that we love in most of our large cities has become a third world country. Now, I'm not up here today to preach a sermon on racism or politics. I'm up here to preach a biblical sermon. And here's what I want to cover. The Christians' right. And I'm talking about white Christians, black Christians, Hispanic Christians, Asian Christians, all Christians. their divine right to protect themselves, their person, to protect their families, to protect their church, to protect their country. I'm not going to deal with that last part of the outline. I'll save that for 2 weeks when we talk about the 4th of July. I'll talk about defending our country. But I want to give you some distinction between killing and murder first, because it's biblical. You go back in the Old Testament, in the days of Noah, God looked upon man and saw the wickedness was so great. He said, every thought of the imagination of the heart was evil, continuously evil. And God said, I will destroy man, whom I have made. God had the right. He made man. He said, I'll destroy man. And he did. And when Noah and his family came out of the ark, God established a premise, a principle that would guide man through the ages. He that shed man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. Genesis 9:6. But he adds, for we are made in the image of God. Our life is important. We're made in the image of God. And he says, he that takes man's life, man shall take his life. That wasn't always that clear. If you go back into ancient history, the Hammurabi Code, the Babylonian text, you'll find that the punishment was much more grievous. But I want to go now to Exodus chapter 20. The 10 Commandments. Number 6, thou shalt not kill. The word for kill in the Old Testament is harag. That's not the word that's used here. Thou shalt not kill. It's rasik. Rasik means thou shalt do no murder. There's a huge difference. That will especially be meaningful when I talk about defending our country. But there's a difference between killing and murder. Now, the man who killed George Floyd, that police officer, is charged with second-degree murder. And that's probably accurate. I want to look at the life of Jesus Christ for a minute. There are some statements that are hard for us to understand. I'm going to read from the Sermon on the Mount for a moment. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Let me stop there for a moment. I mentioned ancient history a while ago. In the old days, a man that would take your life, a man that would take your teeth, your eyes, was punished much, much greater than the tragedy that he created. You lose an eye, you lose your family. You lose a tooth, you lose all your teeth. But he says here, in the law of Moses, an eye receives equal punishment. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. They all understood that. You punish based upon how you were injured. But then he says, but I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go a mile, go with him too. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. Let's analyze this for a moment. He says, if a man slaps you on the right cheek, why did he mention right cheek? Why that specific? The only way that I can strike you with my hand on your right cheek is to slap you with the back of my hand. Come here, Sam, let me show you. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't do that. That's the only way you can do it. Slap it on the back of your hand. It was not designed to kill someone. It was designed to insult someone. From time immemorial, that has been used as a sign of insult. You just flip the hand, back of the hand, and slap someone. And it's designed to engage a person in combat, to insult them. So he says here in the text, don't get carried away with revenge when someone just taps you on the face. He makes it really a minor thing. And he talks about, if he compels you to go a mile, go with him too. He's talking about a Roman soldier now in the days of the empire. Carrying his backpack, if he goes a mile and he gets tired and he sees a Jew over here or any person, he says, here, you take my bag, because the law says you got to carry it for the next mile. Give me a chance to rest. Jesus said, okay, do that. But when you get to that mile marker, say, look, I know you're tired. You've been marching all day. Let me carry it another mile for you. I can imagine that soldier saying, what? You got his attention. He pops you on the side of the face. You turn the other way. You got his attention. What do you tell him? The thing about violence. There's a case where Jesus was standing before Annas the priest. Annas the priest says, tell me about your disciples and the doctrine that you preach. Jesus refused. He said, I spoke openly to the whole world. I preached in the synagogue, I preached in the temple where the Jews sit. Ask them. They know what I said. And immediately, one of the officers slapped him with a palm of his hand. The Bible says palm. He was trying to hurt him. He wasn't trying to insult him. He was trying to knock his head off. Jesus did not turn the other cheek. Read it. He said, if I've spoken evil, in other words, if I've told a lie, you bear witness of it. But if not, why did you strike me? Jesus was a tough guy. He was a carpenter's son. He was raised with heavy timbers and stone. He had muscle. And this in John 18 is not the same application that I read to you in Matthew chapter 5. There comes a time when you have a right to defense. Apostle Paul, Acts chapter 23. Paul stands before Ananias, the priest. He's been preaching some hard stuff. Ananias didn't like it. He motioned for one of his officers, and the guy hit him right in the mouth. Right in the mouth. Paul turns to Ananias the priest. God will smite you, you whited wall. Paul didn't turn the other cheek. The guy was trying to destroy him, trying to hurt him. Let's talk about swords for a minute. When Jesus sent his disciples out, I call it boot camp, Sam. Boot camp. He sent the 12 apostles out. He said, I want you to test the territory here. Don't take a staff. Don't take money. Don't take a sword. Don't take a staff. Don't even take your shoes. Go about and see what kind of reaction you get. If they invite you in, they feed you, and you can spend the night there, great. If not, dust off your feet and go to the next one. But then, after he did that with the 12, he also had the 70 did sit out. But later on, at the Last Supper, and the incidents that surrounded that, he said, you remember when I told you not to take all these things? Well, things were about to change. I want you to take your money, your knapsack, your cloak, your sandals, and I want you to take a sword. Wow, that's a big change from Matthew 5, isn't it? I want you to take a sword. Now, why did he say that? How many of you have heard the expression highway robbery? You've heard of that? Anytime somebody's overpricing, highway robbery. You know where that expression came from? Right here. Old Israel. Every crook and cranny, every corner, there was a robber. Remember the story of the Good Samaritan? That happened every day. When Deborah and I were in Jerusalem, in the Old Town, the tour guide told us, all of you stand single file in lines, because there are pickpockets everywhere. And I was at the front of the line, had another guy at the back of the line. All of a sudden, I heard a commotion. There was a guy trying to grab a wallet away from an old man, one of our members. That was back when I was young, and I talked about old men. His wallet fell right there on the pavement. And the robber ran away, because we were close. But that goes on all the time in Jerusalem today. And back in the days of Jesus, it was commonplace. And so here's what Jesus is saying. When you go out here to evangelize, when you take the gospel to the world, and you carry your money, because if they didn't, they would never have carried the gospel to the world. They would have been stopped every day. Jesus said, you have the right to protect yourself and your property. The gospel is more important. You say, well, what about Peter, though, when he had to try to defend Jesus when they came to get him? Well, that story, if you remember, when Judas came to get Jesus there at Gethsemane, Peter was carrying a sword. That was common. He drew that sword, he swung it, took off the ear of the servant of the high priest. What did Jesus say? Put your sword away. Resheath your sword. Now, he didn't say give it away. He didn't say throw it away. He said just put it back where you had it. Put it back in its place. Because he that lives by the sword shall what? Die by the sword. Two things here. It was not time for Jesus to be rescued. And he says that in Luke chapter 24. He said, it was necessary for the Son of Man to be delivered unto evil men or wicked men. God's plan was not for Peter to save Jesus' life. That was not in the plan. And the second thing is, if Peter takes that sword and starts fighting at that moment, he's saying, I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to attack Rome. I'm going to be a crusader for Christianity with my sword. And Jesus said that's suicide. That's not the way to do it. He said in another place, you remember, my kingdom is what? Not of this world. If it were, what? Then my servants would fight. So that's the context. A person has a right to defend himself. You have a right to defend your family. Let me tell you something, Jimmy. Somebody comes into your home, breaks in. They have a knife to Barbara's throat. That's no time to turn the other cheek, is it? We are commanded to defend our family. 1 Timothy 5 and 8. If a man provide not for his own, he's denied the faith. Denied it. And is worse than an infidel. That word provide there, pronoeo, means to give careful care, even premeditated care. Something that you think through, you plan. Planning to care for your family. And caring for your family is not just feeding them and clothing them, it's also what? Protecting. Psalms 82. He says, you shall protect the needy. And you shall hold their hand against the wicked. That includes your family. I believe we have a right to protect our property. Luke chapter 11, verse 21. He says, a strong man, fully armed, get that part, fully armed, protects his castle, that's your home, and his property is safe. Now follow that progression. Strong man, fully armed, protects his castle, protects his property. The man has that right. In Exodus chapter 22, it talks about if a thief breaks into your house and you strike him and he dies, you are not guilty of his blood shed. You have a right to defend yourself, your family, your household. You have a right to defend the church. The Lord did that. But let me go back to Nehemiah. Remember in Nehemiah how the people came from Babylon and they came back for the purpose of rebuilding the city and rebuilding the temple? And what did the Samaritans do? They did everything in the world to stop it. And so they divided up the people. Half of them worked with stone and mortar and lumber to build the city and the temple. The other half had their swords drawn and their spears and their shields to protect them. Jesus protected the temple. He found those that were selling animals, sheep, cattle, doves in the Lord's house. He went in and made up a group group of cords built a whip right there on the spot and drove them out. I saw a painting in Amsterdam by Rembrandt of Jesus driving out the money changer. It was the most strange picture because the animals looked like they were terrified, trying to flee. And the men were falling all over themselves. The tables were turned over, and the money was flying in the air. And Jesus was driving them out with a whip. We have a right to protect our church. Right, Sam? After everybody's seated, we lock the doors, don't we say? You know what I'm talking about. Just as a precaution. Protect our church. This is a house of prayer. Now, some of the statements made in Romans chapter, or rather Matthew chapter 5 that I read early on, are hard. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who despitefully use and persecute you. That's tough, isn't it? How do you do that? If you don't do it all at once. Let me give you a little surprise here. Go to the last verse of this chapter. Do not even the tax collectors the same. Therefore, ye shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. If you do the things that he said, you'll be perfect like the Father. The word perfect here is not talking about sinlessness at all. The word perfect here simply means mature. Mature. Do you become mature in one day? You snap your fingers and, hey, I'm mature now. No. To run the risk of sounding like Nick Saban, it's a process. It's a progression of your life. It takes your whole life to become mature. And it takes your whole life to imbibe these principles here. I bet there's not a single person in this room today, of all the things I read in Matthew 5, have those perfected. Those are tough. Now then, in the 12th chapter of Romans, I want to read this. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him drink. If in so doing, you will heap coals of fire on his head. That's what is called a metaphor. But heaping coals of fire on his head was descriptive of causing a person to change their attitude about you because of some kindness that you did, to make them feel ashamed. Someone slaps you, and you turn the other cheek. Yeah, they're going to feel ashamed about what they just did, the way they treat you. Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. And listen to this. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, have and live peaceably